I wasn't supposed to be inside the tunnels under campus. And honestly, if I had ignored the open gate behind the old science building that night, none of this would have happened. It was during finals week of my sophomore year. Around midnight, I left the library after hours of studying because I needed air. The campus was almost completely empty, and everything felt strange in that late-night silence. I ended up wandering farther than usual until I noticed a fence gate standing slightly open near the boiler plant. Behind it was a concrete staircase leading underground toward a heavy metal door that had been left cracked open. Warm air drifted upward, carrying this horrible smell of wet concrete, rust, and something rotten underneath it. I should have walked away immediately, but students had spent years talking about abandoned tunnels beneath the university, old maintenance passageways supposedly left over from when the school used to be a military hospital decades ago. Everybody treated it like an urban legend, and part of me wanted to prove the rumors were fake. So, I pulled out my phone flashlight and stepped inside. The staircase descended much deeper than I expected, and at the bottom stretched this massive concrete tunnel lined with pipes dripping water onto the floor. Every sound echoed endlessly down there. Even my own footsteps sounded wrong, like another pair of footsteps followed half a second behind mine. At first, I only planned to look around for a minute, but curiosity kept pulling me deeper underground. Old metal doors lined the tunnel walls, most chained shut, and strange messages had been spray-painted across the concrete. Some were faded, others looked fresh. One message simply said, "Don't follow the whistling." I laughed nervously after reading it. But maybe 30 seconds later, I heard it for the first time. Faint whistling somewhere deep in the darkness ahead. A slow melody repeating over and over. It sounded human, and for some reason that made it worse. I froze in place, listening carefully while the sound echoed through the tunnels. It never got louder, never got quieter. It stayed perfectly steady, almost impossible to locate. I should have turned around right then, but instead, I followed it. The farther I walked, the stranger the tunnels became. The pipes disappeared overhead, the walls grew darker with moisture, and eventually, I reached an intersection where 3 different tunnels branched off into darkness. That's where I found the chair. One metal chair, sitting alone in the middle of the tunnel facing the wall. Above it, someone had carved thousands of tally marks directly into the concrete. The moment my flashlight landed on them, the whistling stopped completely. Silence swallowed everything. Then, I heard footsteps behind me, splashing softly through shallow water. I spun around immediately, but the tunnel was empty. Still, the footsteps continued, getting closer, even though nobody was there. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. Then my flashlight dropped toward the floor, and I saw wet, barefoot footprints appearing one after another across the concrete, as if an invisible person was walking straight toward me. I ran instantly. I sprinted through the tunnels while the footsteps chased me, and the whistling started again directly behind me. So close. It sounded like somebody leaning beside my ear. I turned one corner and nearly slipped when my flashlight illuminated a tall figure standing motionless at the far end of the passageway. Its body looked wrong somehow. Too long, arms hanging almost to its knees, water dripping steadily from its clothes onto the floor beneath it. Despite being far away, I could hear it breathing, deep, wet breaths echoing through the tunnel. Then slowly, it raised one arm and pointed directly at me. Every light overhead shut off instantly. Complete darkness swallowed the tunnel system. I started screaming and running blindly while footsteps splashed all around me from every direction. At one point, my phone slipped from my hand and spun across the floor, briefly illuminating dozens of pale figures standing silently farther down the tunnel. Wet faces, motionless bodies, watching me. Then the light went out again. I somehow found the staircase and burst back onto the surface, gasping for air. The moment I reached campus, the whistling stopped. I called campus security immediately and tried explaining everything, but when I showed them where I entered the tunnels, the staircase was gone. The gate stood locked, and behind it was only solid concrete wall. The officers treated me like I was sleep-deprived or hallucinating. One even asked if I'd been drinking. I almost convinced myself maybe I had imagined the whole thing, until the next morning, when I woke up and found dried, muddy footprints crossing my dorm room floor. Bare footprints, leading from the window directly to my bed. My roommate swore nobody entered during the night. I tried ignoring it after that, but 3 nights later, I received an email at exactly 2:13 a.m. There was no subject line, no message, just a single attachment. When I opened it, my blood went cold. It was a blueprint of the university campus, except beneath the buildings stretched hundreds of underground tunnels marked in faded red lines. One section near the center had been circled repeatedly in black marker, beside the words, "You were here." I stared at it for almost an hour before finally deciding to go back. I told myself I wanted answers, but honestly, part of me just needed to know the tunnels were real. A few nights later, I returned to campus and found another entrance hidden beneath the old theater building behind overgrown bushes. The hatch was unlocked. The second I opened it, that same smell drifted upward again. Wet concrete, rust, rot. Then, from somewhere far below, came the whistling. Slow, waiting. I climbed down anyway. The tunnels looked even worse this time. Water covered parts of the floor and messages covered almost every wall. Keep moving. Don't look back. It mimics voices. As I moved deeper underground, I started finding personal belongings scattered everywhere. Shoes, backpacks, broken phones, like people had dropped everything while running. Then I found the first body. At least, I think it was a body. A pale gray figure sat slumped against the wall, dripping water onto the floor. I whispered, "Hello," before realizing it wasn't breathing. Then suddenly, its head turned toward me. I ran immediately while the whistling erupted behind me louder than ever. This time, other sounds joined it. Footsteps. Dozens of them splashing through water all throughout the tunnels. I turned a corner and my flashlight illuminated a message scratched into the wall. "If you hear your own voice, run." The second I read it, I heard myself whisper behind me, "Wait." I froze instantly. Then again, closer this time. "Don't leave me." It sounded exactly like my voice. Perfectly. Panic exploded through me and I started sprinting deeper into the tunnels while voices echoed all around me, some crying, some laughing, some begging for help. Then I heard my old roommate Tyler calling for me from a dark tunnel nearby. "Please, help me," he whispered weakly. For 1 second, I actually believed it was him, until I remembered Tyler had died months earlier in a car accident.
The voice kept crying in the darkness. Then suddenly, dozens of voices joined it, all using my voice, repeating the same sentence over and over. "Don't leave me here." My flashlight revealed hundreds of wet footprints completely surrounding me in the shallow water, even though they hadn't been there seconds earlier. Then every voice stopped at once. Complete silence. And from somewhere ahead came one enormous, wet breath. My flashlight flickered and illuminated something standing directly in front of me.
Tall, thin, limbs bent unnaturally. Its face almost looked human, except the skin hung loose like soaked paper, and its mouth stretched impossibly wide. Inside that mouth, I could see human faces moving beneath the skin, like trapped people trying to scream. Then it smiled at me, using my own face. After that, everything blurred together. Running, falling, hearing hundreds of footsteps chasing me, while dozens of pale figures sprinted unnaturally fast through the tunnels behind me, whistling that same melody. I barely escaped through the hatch before sunrise, and when I finally reached the surface, the sounds stopped instantly. No footsteps, no whistling, nothing. I went straight to the police afterward, but by the time they checked my phone, the blueprint email had disappeared completely. No sender, no attachment, nothing. A week later, the university suddenly shut down part of the campus for maintenance, and students online started talking about hearing drilling and construction sounds beneath the buildings late at night, before all the posts mysteriously disappeared. I transferred schools shortly afterward and moved across the state, but it didn't matter. A few months later, I woke up at exactly 2:13 in the morning to the sound of water dripping inside my apartment. Wet, barefoot footprints covered the floor beside my bed, leading from my closet to where I had been sleeping. The closet door stood slightly open, even though I always kept it shut. Then, from inside the darkness, came that same whistling again. I ran out of the apartment without shoes and drove around until sunrise before finally returning home. The footprints were gone, but later that same night, I received another email from an unknown address. This time, the attachment was a photograph taken somewhere inside the tunnels. In the center of the image, illuminated by weak flashlight glow, was me running through the darkness, meaning somebody had been behind me the entire time underground. After that, things only got worse. I started hearing whistling everywhere. Parking garages, storm drains, empty stairwells. Once, I heard it coming from the air vent above my bed. Then, one night, I woke to knocking sounds inside my apartment walls. Slow, rhythmic knocking from every direction around me. Water leaked down the ceiling, while wet footsteps crossed slowly through the hallway outside my bedroom. I looked toward the darkness and saw a tall, dripping figure standing there, using Tyler's face. More figures appeared behind it, filling the hallway shoulder to shoulder. Some wore hospital gowns. Some looked like students. Others barely looked human anymore. All of them smiling, while they whistled that same melody together in perfect synchronization. I ran out of the apartment and never went back. Since then, I've moved across 3 different states, but it doesn't matter where I go. Every once in a while, around 2:13 in the morning, I still wake up hearing faint whistling somewhere nearby. Sometimes I find wet footprints outside windows or doors. Last night, I heard the melody coming from underneath my bed, while something slowly dragged wet fingers across the floor beneath me. Then, just before sunrise, my own voice whispered softly from the darkness under the bed, "You were never supposed to leave the tunnels."